Well, hello there. Welcome to another edition of Politely Intoxicated, and happy Easter weekend. I'm Justin Bond, and again, so glad you could come along again this week. So much happening in the news. With the Trump White House, it's like we get a month's worth of news delivered in a day, and that was especially true this week because I feel like at some point during the week, President Trump either went to a sporting event or somebody stepped into the Oval Office one day to sing the national anthem. They got to the rockets' red glare and bombs bursting in air part, and he thought, holy moly, I've been asleep at the stick here. And Syria got a wake-up call that many would argue that they were several years overdue for. Now, I got to be honest with you, and I hate being a waffler, but I have been thinking about that Syria, attack, if you want to call it. It was a very surgical attack in that it's very isolated, very specific to that one air base, as to whether it was a good idea or not. Because prior to that chemical attack that they put out there, I would have, empirically said that that getting into Syria was a terrible idea. Of course, Donald Trump himself would have said that and did in 2013. And chastised then President Obama pretty hard about his consideration of getting involved in Syria. My, how things can be funny sometimes. But, when you see the pictures of the kids being, being chemically attacked, dying horrifically, that is pretty moving. The president said that himself. I'm going to take him at his word and assume that that's the reason that he had kind of the change of heart on the matter. But I have no party affiliation, but I just have I kind of have a policy. Whereas if you're not sure and the option is the government getting involved or not getting involved, I like to err on the side of not getting involved, just because historically the government has a pretty good track history of once they step in on something, just screwing it up. And so I kind of like the idea of them not touching anything, because if they don't do it, they can't screw it up. And it really looked a lot like this in Syria. Now, because President Trump made that tweet in 2013, you have to assume that Syrian President Assad was just stunned. And, I think that he probably was stunned because he thought, wait a minute, I thought the coast was clear for this. So I will say that maybe, if nothing else, there was equity in the fact that just by doing something, maybe it will temper, future stupidity on Syria's part. But that's not where the shock and awe ended this week, because, and this I actually am really on board with, because when it comes to national security and taking military action, then, of course, I think you have to do something there, and there is a positive correlation between our safety and the safety of ISIS members. So whenever they, and this kind of kills me here, because when this bomb dropped in Afghanistan that was, as reported, was intended to take out a tunnel system that ISIS folks used to kind of move back and forth. They said that it was they used an MOAB, the mother of all bombs, while not the technical name for it seems to be the name that everybody in the armed services calls it. And I'm thinking, well, is that like a marketing decision? Was the daddy of all destruction taken, or is that in development still? But anyway, I guess it isn't an inappropriate name, because it's 21,000 pounds of explosives. It is the biggest non-nuclear bomb in the United States arsenal. So you have to imagine that those guys were singing Daniel Powter's Bad Day when that thing dropped. And you know what? I just don't feel bad for them. And I'll tell you, as long as explosives are dropping on top of ISIS people. I support that all day, every single day, because I'll tell you, if those guys had the mother of all bombs and a shot at us, you better believe they don't care which one of us, how many of us, they're going to pull that trigger. I have been reporting news so many years that there is nothing that any politician says that really surprises me, or at least I thought, because I'm so cynical at this point that I am more stunned when I think they're having an authentic and sincere moment. But every great once in a while, somebody will rear their head and even stun me. And this week, it was Secretary Hillary Clinton.
With men, success and ambition are correlated with likability. So the more successful a man is, the more likable he becomes. With a woman, guess what? It's the exact opposite. So the more successful and therefore ambitious a woman is, the less likable she becomes. That's the inverse correlation that lies at the heart of a lot of the attacks and the misogyny, and it's unconscious. It's not like...
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but...
If her insinuation here, and I don't know how you could interpret this any other way, is that the reason she lost the election is because she is a successful woman, and successful women are just frowned upon, and people don't like them because they're successful and they're a woman. But if the reverse were true, if she were a man and she was successful, she'd be revered. She'd be loved. That argument she might get that cake to bake if she was running against anybody else than Donald Trump in the November general election. Because if she's trying to say that people just think Donald Trump is a swell guy, she is out of her mind. Like she had a stroke, something, and not to make light of strokes, but something, there was a medication bottle that fell out of her medicine cabinet that she's not taking, because that's crazy. The fact of the matter is throughout the entire election cycle between these two knuckleheads, they both had popularity ratings, or likability ratings rather, in the low 40s to upper 30s. It was the lowest likability rating of any presidential candidates in modern day history. Now, what she either is in denial about or she won't admit publicly, because I have to keep in mind, she gave this talk at, it was a Women in the World conference. So I guess, it's not like the Clintons would never pander to the audience. But, and I'm a capitalist too, so I understand they're probably paying her somewhere in the ballpark of $250,000 to give a talk. You offer me $250,000 and I'll get up there and say whatever it is that you want me to say that's going to be, that's going to get, my entire, theater of people going, yeah, that's right. Fortunately, everybody that attended the Women in the World conference was able to get out and go, because they all have cats. And as we know, cats are very independent, so being gone for a few days, not a big deal. But I digress. So the fact of the matter is, and if somebody wants to challenge me on this, hey, great, let's have this conversation, because I'm willing to be wrong. But the fact that Donald Trump is president today has nothing to do with the fact that people love him. It's the fact that they hated her that much, and why she can't get that through her head is just unbelievable. If she had run against Casey Anthony, I don't know if she still wins the state of Florida. But I don't know. I think the Clintons are not stupid. Hillary Clinton is not an idiot. Maybe narcissistic and crazy, but they all are. So how she could honestly, in her heart of hearts, believe this is true, I don't know, unless she is suffering from something very, very profound as a result of losing to Donald Trump, which, that's very possible, because Donald Trump, throughout the course of he said 10 things a week that would have torpedoed anybody else's campaign, but somehow, and I think the somehow is that that variable is the fact that he was running against Hillary Clinton. He just skates right on in there. So before we get off on a horse here, Mrs. Clinton, and say that men have an upper hand in that being successful and ambitious also makes us likable, but not the case for women, I think you need to stare in the mirror a little bit harder in the morning and ask yourself, why don't people like me? If I may, if you'll grant me the autonomy, I'd like to go ahead and get into our asshole of the week, which I normally save for the end of the show every single week. However, I have something different planned for the end here today, something brighter and happier, which, I know I'm surprised too. Brighter and happier. These are not adjectives that you'll generally see me use a lot, and you certainly won't see my name in the same sentence with, but we'll get there. And I know this next clip, we've seen it in the news like at least 50 gazillion times this week, and I hate to make it 50 gazillion in one, but I kind of gotta. And I think you'll recognize it immediately when you see it, and there's just no skipping over this.
Oh my God! Pilots drive to Louisville? Can't they rent a car for the pilots and have them drive? No! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! No! My guys, my God! What are you doing? No, this is wrong! Oh my God! Look at what you did to him! Oh my God!
Isn't that shit just unbelievable? I fly all the time, and I'm under no delusion that when I go to the airport, they're not going to treat me like anything more than just cattle. But that is way, way over the top. I don't, and the air police, what the hell do they call them? The air police, the TSA, whatever it is, the air cops, the plane cops. It's like, they went and got every single tackleberry they could find at police academy and said, why don't you guys go raid airplanes? See how that goes. Well, we saw how that goes. And to go ahead and make and compound this stupidity, Oscar Munoz, I believe it's the United Airlines CEO's name, his statement is just so sympathetic, empathetic, and just as flat morose saying, and and gets in there and says, well, basically, we have the right to do that, and blah 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 blah. Oh, I don't care that you can. People can do a lot of things. The question is whether you should, and they've gotten so much backlash over this, and I'll tell you, I hope they keep getting backlash over it, because it's just so obscene, and the only way that anybody will continue to care about it is if it somehow hurts them in their wallet, which their stock price did. That value did take a huge dive after that. I don't think that'll last or be very meaningful, but offer them $1,000, $1,200, whatever the number is. If they'd offered me $800 and I didn't have anywhere that important to be, I'm getting off that plane. And the other thing to point out here is airlines have been overselling flights, forever. And that's just standard practice. I get that. That's never going to change. I'm not even going to argue that it should change, because all in all, their science behind it is pretty good. But this wasn't even for passengers. This was for a flight crew that needed to get somewhere. So if you work for United Airlines, you didn't buy the seat, go ahead and put them on the luggage rack on top. I think that's just fair. every place I've ever worked where there was, whether it be a retail setting, anywhere where there's a customer, I've never gotten preferential treatment because I work there. So, sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Flight Attendant. Up on the luggage rack you go. Lastly, this week, I do want to talk about an individual that I thought was awesome, amazing guy, and I never even got to meet him personally. And it's one of my biggest regrets is that I never got to see Don Rickles perform live. I'm a huge fan of comedy. I have done stand-up comedy unsuccessfully, and not. And clearly wasn't very funny because you're listening to me in this capacity. But I was a huge fan of stand-up comedy, still am. And Don Rickles, I thought was just out of this world. My dad loved Don Rickles, so of course, and everybody's dad loved Don Rickles, but because your dad does, you do, and you thought somebody that just got up there and would just insult people, and they love it. I mean, who else could do that? Nobody could do that other than Don Rickles. Or at least if there's somebody out there doing it, not near on the level that Mr. Rickles did. And I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of days, believe it was the day after he died. He would have been 91 next month, but he passed away at 90. And we were saying, of all the jokes that we've heard Don Rickles tell, if you had to pick a favorite, what would it be? And I had one that immediately came to mind. And it was during an appearance on the David Letterman show. I think it was in 2008. And I thought, but it was such a simple one-liner that I thought, well, that can't be my favorite Don Rickles show because he had so many. I mean, there was very little that he said that wasn't hysterical. So I gave it some thought here, for a couple of days, trying to think if I had to say what my favorite Don Rickles joke would it be. And they're all good, but the one one-liner he gave on the Letterman show in 2008, I just kept reverting back to it. It seems very innocuous and very benign, but man, I actually watched that show live, or watched it the day the Letterman show aired when he was on 9 years ago, I guess it was, and that just hit me the right way, and I laughed and laughed, and I wanted to share that with you here real quick before we go.
Anyway, so Frank fixed me up with this one girl. Oh. I'll never forget, Margie, her name was. He said, Don, I got this girl for you. She's perfect. And she was blonde, kind of cute, glasses, and a little space like you. Little space in her front teeth.
Between her front teeth, yeah.
Yeah, and every time we made love, she started to whistle. I didn't know if I stooped her or made tea.